You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hey, this is Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. The Iron Lady sings that makes it official. Welcome to the big show. As always, for 16 years, going on 2,800 episodes, we're bringing the Chris Voss Show and all the most amazing minds, journeys, stories, lessons of life that you can possibly have to improve the quality of our audience's life. We love you guys. As always, though, you got to share the show. That's all we ask. It's very simple. Just listen to the show and share it. Share the love, because you want people smarter when you go to, you want your family smarter when you go to those Christmas dinners and Thanksgiving dinners. Otherwise, there's always that, something might happen that involves the police. Anyway, I'm just joking. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss. You haven't been to my Thanksgivings, have you? Facebook.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, and YouTube.com/Chris Voss. All those crazy places. Today we have an amazing young man on the show. We're going to be talking about his book called The Safe Place by Brandon M. Rogers, and talking about his novel and some of the ways this integrates into business and leadership, et cetera, his podcast as well, yada, yada, yada. We are getting into it. Brandon Rogers is a founder and fractional CFO at a company called 2R Consulting Group. He has 2 decades of financial expertise with an emphasis on financial turnarounds, mergers and acquisitions, forecasting and strategic planning, and trend analysis. He holds an undergraduate dual degree in finance and accounting with an MBA in finance. Welcome to the show, Brandon. How are you?
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Chris. Yeah, doing great.
Thank you. And thanks for coming. Give us your .coms. Where can people find out more about you on the interwebs?
Yeah, absolutely. 2rconsultinggroup.com and BrandonRogersAuthor.com. A little bit of both sides of the brain on both of those places.
There you go. So give us a 30,000 overview on what's inside your book, The Safe Place.
Yeah, it's a story, a novel about a young man, Tristan, that essentially is a raw communication on what life is, the difficulties, the issues of temptation and success, and ultimately his downfall. And it walks through a myriad of childhood traumas and the path to redemption. And I think the great thing about this book is that it put a punctuation mark on no one feeling too sorry for themselves, but not glorifying or romanticizing any one specific journey. Everybody's story is different. And for Tristan, he talks a lot about how he moves up and down and all of the people in the wake of him. So it's a jarring story. I've had a lot of good reviews so far and excited to keep that story going.
There you go. And it came out January 6, 2026, for those of you searching it on Amazon. Now, is this, what was the motivation behind writing this book? What was the aha moment or the epiphany where you're like, hey, I need to write a book about this sort of topic?
Yeah, so it is very strongly influenced by real life. And so it was an easy, somewhat cathartic process for me to write it. Interestingly enough, I spent the first 8 years of the novel trying to get past the 4th chapter. And then my daughter, Bailey, spent some time poking me for a few months. And finally, one afternoon on a Friday, I came back. She said, Daddy, you've got to finish this book. Sunday night, it was done. 10 chapters, wrote another 26,000 words that weekend. And then just a couple months later, I had a publisher and then wrote my second novel over the course of a family vacation and another 200 pages. So it just seems to be falling out. Very grateful for the opportunity in the medium. And the inspiration for Tristan and so many of the characters is obviously, as most people, drawn from real life.
Mm-hmm. Well, there you go. I imagine, do you feel like this is coming easy to you, to where you see maybe a career in this?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I actually see, every time I sit down and write it, I imagine, so I've been going to the movie theater once a week for the last 8 years. And it has been a passion. Movies are a passion. Storytelling is such a passion, which is one of the reasons why I enjoy the work I do and the reason I built the firm we have. But in this process of being in a place of healing and, this book, I found that the storytelling piece is a creative way. And there are probably some teachers back in college and high school that would have said, this is definitely the path for him, that I think I could keep going. So, the movies, I can see this being adapted to a film. It's exciting, just the idea of telling a story, but reaching an audience that all can resonate with the message.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you have the second book. Is the second book tied to the first? Or they stand alone, each of them? Or is
No, they're standalone in that my editor was very, very strong in saying this book cannot be clickbait. It cannot leave it. And so we reworked how I decided to approach the end. But the books are connected. The stories themselves are standalone. So it's very much getting the idea of the character and the way that I put the stories together. And I have and people ask a little bit about it. My approach is extremely poetic, the writing, but thinking like Christopher Nolan might write a movie. There's 3 different time frames in the writing, and that's one of the reasons why I keep thinking of movies as I write the books. They're so easy to put down, but the in any given moment, the characters or protagonists are traversing 3 different plot lines and 3 different time frames. Yeah.
It's so complex to build those plot lines. At least it is for most people. Do you find it easy to do?
Yeah, it's very easy for me. And I think all the reasons why grade school was very hard, right? So we all have journeys in our education, and we all have people that tell us you're not quite in the mold. And I struggled with this for the better part of 2 decades. And yes, now I think just like many people that have certain gifts, I think for me, this is a gift, and I'm grateful for it. And I'm trying to wield it with discernment and and stewardship.
I didn't have any trouble in school. I just let the bullies beat up on me and lock me in lockers. So
the bullies for me were constantly poking fun, and I can appreciate that, Chris. Just and there's a little bit of like, is this my lot? But I think after college, I realized everybody's weird. Everybody's got a thing. How much do we want to hide behind other stuff? And that changed it for me, Chris. That writing this book and then realizing, like, I published a book that was kind of cool, and I thought this is going to be this big, huge climax of my life. And then I finished, and I'm like, did it matter? Did anybody find impact? And I have had a couple text messages from people I've never met telling me that reading a book that did in one sitting, quite literally shifted the trajectory. I mean, I had one that I read and I sent it to my wife, and I'm like, can you believe this? And I mean, these are the things that are inspiring me to go more. So I think about those bullies that poked on the way that I think, or perhaps you thought, and I think now maybe they're seeing there was a purpose in it all.
Yeah, I mean, we're all a collection of our stories and journeys and our cathartic moments we've overcome in life, and without them, we wouldn't be anything. Like if I didn't have all my crazy, wild stories of life that I survived,
it's true.
Sometimes I sit around and pinch myself. Am I still? I guess I made it.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Now, so this deals with several different, some challenging topics, trauma and maze of relationships, faith struggles, painful remnants of the past. Was there some of this in you? Was some of this kind of a pseudo memoir?
Yes, so it very much was a memoir. And I think the nicety about being able to say that now, and I always struggled with what I would say as I had this question come, is that those that have read it, that know my story, maybe didn't know all of it. And for those that have read it and say, well, this must be embellished, it doesn't really matter how they take it because the story itself. But yes, I don't think as an author you can write 40-some thousand words over the course of 6 days and not have some sense of drawing it from a place that was real, right? And that was that moved you. So I think when I sat down, I was with my wife in North Carolina last July and my daughters. And I said, all right, I'll be on the beach for 2 hours a day. It's so hard to sit in that sun. And can I go home and, back to the condo and just write? Sure. And then on day 5, I'm like, I think the book's done. And then she read it that night. She said, oh my gosh, you wrote another book. It's one of those things though, that she said, I think you're becoming an author now, because the first book, everybody just sort of word vomits. And it's the second book that I think really starts to push towards your craft. And
Ah.
I start to look at other people and think, wow, these authors are really good, and understanding emotional arcs and, all of the pieces that make authors really good authors. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Well, it's definitely a good thing to sometimes telling stories in a format that's not nonfiction kind of helps create that levity, I think, or illusion, where it's not, just, hey, here's my story and here's what happened to me. There's people can develop the characters. You have maybe a little bit more freedom to play with the characters, and maybe the plots, maybe.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you say that. I've been noticing things like when you watch a movie inspired by true events, or, based on a real story, and you can sense when authors or filmmakers take liberties there. And
Mm-hmm.
I've always been interested. But the movies that end with, the black and whites of pictures of the real, whether it's a survivor or an athlete or whatever, always draws me in. And I'm trying to think psychologically what it is about that. And I think when you base a novel, which is why I didn't make this a memoir, it's why I didn't say this is my story, because people can connect to the characters when they know that there's some element of creativity that may or may not have been completely accurate or not accurate at all. It allows people to dream a bit, and in that dreaming they can relate, and that relation allows the book to be adopted more. So it was very intentional that it was a novel, and for me, telling the story and continuing to push these stories of Tristan and other characters in the book, I'm finding are attaching to other people in ways that have nothing to do with the specific trauma events, but still connected, nonetheless.
There you go. There you go. And let's talk about, we discussed prior to the show about leadership, and in how you talk about this in the book, and some of the other different tips in the book that talk about what you do at your work, what you do there at the company with 2R Consulting Group. Talk to us about that.
Sure. Yeah. So I built this company about 4 years ago, almost next month. And the whole idea, after 2 decades in corporate America, running finance for large companies, figuring out how can I do this more efficiently, but just to be nicer, not to do the things, put the tie on and put the shoes on, and how can I be me in my fullest element? And then that came way to, how do you lead? And incidentally, our leadership is not too different from what we learned in third grade. But most of us just stop acquiescing to the things that are natural, and we conform to the things that are told to us. So I said, all right, I'm going to build this firm that is predicated on leadership that comes from a place that's natural. And this book was very much a path toward being honest about who that person was, who this child was, and who he became, who Tristan became. And then looking at the people that I'm with now and thinking, the way that they look at the world matters to how I'm able to do this business. So every day I think, am I being honest with myself? Am I thinking about the things that they don't share with me, but that are very much driving their mood or their perspective? And that has shifted dramatically my ability to be a leader that connects and that influences. And so I think that I gave a talk today to a 100 plus college students at a local university that are business school, and the whole contrast, which I don't like, was meet Brandon Rogers and his how he became successful. And I said, whoa, let's just back up here. This isn't a Facebook review of who I am, and this is not, like, let me just tell you. And I literally stacked for 10 minutes every single terrible thing that had happened from 0 to 15 to 25. That was failure and shame and regret. And I said, this is how you find contentment. And this is what you really have to do to get to the places that maybe look picturesque to the person outside. And for me, that is leadership, authenticity, but to an extreme. There's a book I read a while ago, so extreme ownership. And we don't own things extremely. I don't think as much as or as well as we could. So I decided, I could very much use my expertise in finance and strategy to influence people at a very, very primitive level. And leadership has just spun out, and I get requests now, would you mentor me? And and it's been a blessing to be able to feel like it's a real thing. It's making real impact.
There you go. That's the beautiful thing about books, man. You sometimes don't know who you're gonna touch who's going to read your book. Sometimes you may never meet the person whose life you changed, but every now and then you meet somebody and it changes your thing. So tell us about what you guys do there at your company and how you do it, and what sort of clients you qualify that might be listening in the audience, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure, yeah. So To Our Consulting Group was born out of a desire to provide the basics for a large company, and we handle small to medium-sized companies, 5 million to 200 million, and we're doing everything from building out their accounting and finance structure to brokering, renegotiating contracts or negotiating new contracts, to providing scenario-based analysis and building models that are very dynamic. We have coders and we have financial analysts and we have CPAs. We have the whole breadth of the finance accounting arm, and we're industry agnostic. So everything we do is applicable to every business. And right now we have 12 different partners and I've got 14 employees. And we work in the metal fabrication industry, and we work in the medical industry and the dental industry. We work in the nonprofit sector. We are in everything. And part of what makes this great is that allows us selfishly to learn more from different areas and different people that otherwise we may not have had a chance to do. So it really is. Do you want a stronger turnaround or better growth or more strategic deployment of your resource, cash or otherwise? We're in there, and we've been growing so well because this very much is a relationship, based, and it all is rooted in how we lead and how we connect.
There you go. It's all leadership when it comes down to it, I suppose.
True.
Now, what sort of, if people want to work with you, do they need to have a 5 to 10 million income base? How does that work?
Oh, no. So the firms, it's really where, if they've got a company or if they're even doing some personal development. So I do executive coaching, business coaching, but even if they have a small business, and most small businesses as they grow, they're always hitting some sort of ceiling. Am I in the right place? Are we, using our resources well? How do I grow, and how do I know when to hire the next person? Everything structurally that you would consider from inception till you hit that 200th employee. Those are the things we work with, and we have testimonials, and for 4 years I made 2 phone calls to start this business, and not since have I done anything other than receive referral. And
wow.
Interestingly enough, and I'm very grateful for it. Interestingly enough, I found one of my first partner was a student at a local university. He came to intern for me, and that was 13 employees ago. Everyone that we connect with now has been a reference from either myself or from him. So we don't advertise, we don't solicit, we don't on LinkedIn say we're hiring. You have to be vetted, and the first 2 criteria, and everybody, if you ever ask, will say, what 2 things matter the most to Brandon? They're going to say to you, you got to show up and work hard, and you've got to be kind. You cannot break either of those 2 things. I can teach a lot of things to a lot of people, but those 2 things are a fabric of character. And I've realized in my 44 years of life, if they're not there already, I'm not going to get them there.
That's true. Now, you mean morally, ethically, developed as they are as human beings? Is that what you mean?
As far as the kind?
Employees?
Yeah. This is, we sit down with you and you have a terrible day, and your business is in shambles, and or you've got people leaving and you may look like a monster. Our job is to understand and look past all of that and to be kind no matter what. So it is an expectation that even our days are never too tough to be able to be there for our partners.
There you go. Now, there was one thing I wanted to fall back to. I had it queued up in my brain and lost track of it.
Sure.
Now, you mentioned that in the book there was some healing for traumas and different things that are talked about, I think, in the book, or you referenced that maybe you had done some of that. Was this a book that you did maybe after you healed from some of the childhood wounds? Did you go to therapy, or did you do any of that?
Yeah. So I think anybody who's honest with themselves about writing any memoir, or themselves in general, would tell you that the book always starts with some sort of healing from a childhood trauma. But as we dive deeply into who we are, that healing is a process that never stops. It just doesn't. Every time I think I've caught some sort of vibe or wave to arrive somewhere, I realize I'm just a little bit further from the place I left. That's it. And I think you could probably appreciate. Plus, I have 2 daughters, and they're wonderful. My wife, they're wonderful. But goodness, if I'm not on skates all day long, like my head is on a swivel, so I'm never arriving. But yes, this book was born out of some very specific traumatic events from which I've found healing through counseling, and I still see a spiritual director 3 times a week since I built this business. I'm going to see him next week for 3 days as a retreat, just the 2 of us in North Carolina. I mean, I'm very into mental health, but this healing process, as we dig deep, it never ends. I mean, we're always bent and influenced by the things we see even today.
Yeah, I think if you have childhood trauma or really any big T trauma in your life, it tends to influence you. Even after you heal and get stuff, that imprint is still there.
So
And
true.
so it can be, it can be a challenge to deal with, right? It can be, it haunts you basically, and
Yeah,
sometimes
and
it can still
it's
be the
helpful too,
rose-colored
Chris. I'll just,
glasses.
even I see some of some of my colleagues, it doesn't matter, my age, older, where there may be habits that you just can't see, in yourself, but the why usually stems from some need or longing that just wasn't met, a deficit that still sits there. So yes, I mean, if we're honest, like I said, with ourselves, you can almost study it anywhere.
Yeah, you know, and it's great that did you feel like you could have written this book before you got healed?
No, no. I think God gave me a lot of perspective to get the first book done,
Hmm.
and I don't. And the second book felt like it was just easy to put down. But the third book, I've said, all right, I'm going to sit down and try to do it, and it's not ready yet. And so part of me is like, maybe I help someone write their book until my story bakes a little bit more. But I've allowed this process to be very free flowing and not to force it. So yeah, I mean, I couldn't have done it if I wasn't right here, right now.
Yeah. And so that's just, I think this is a great testament to getting healed if you have trauma. People always ask me, what would you tell yourself, what would you tell yourself if you could go back to the future, your teenage self? People ask that on Facebook and stuff. And they're always surprised by my answer because everyone's like, go buy Bitcoin or, go to this or whatever. And, and mine is always like, go to trauma, or go to therapy for your
Yeah,
trauma,
yeah,
kid.
right, right.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's funny as you said that. I don't really ask myself that question often, but the immediate response was I would just be nicer to myself.
yeah, that too,
Just give
that
yourself
too,
a break.
that too. I mean, it was, you're hard on yourself, and the world's hard on you too, as a young
Mm,
man, especially because you're pretty much worthless. You have to make something of yourself. We're not born into our value as men. And so, not only do we have to overcome the trauma, but we have to build ourselves into something that contributes to society, that can build a family, and everything else. And most men don't reach the pinnacle of that till maybe their 40s and 50s.
oh yeah,
It takes
without
us a
question.
lifetime to make something of ourselves. And, we spend 10, 20 years kind of wandering in the wilderness trying to figure us out and ourselves out and life out and what am I supposed to build? When I tell my younger folks in the Gen Z community, hey, here's what you need to do, they're just like, what? I got to do that too?
Right. Yeah.
So, it's interesting. Sadly, we don't recognize a lot of the impacts of a lot of our unresolved trauma until we get older. And that's kind of because you can kind of look backward and see these dead bodies you've been dragging through life and this weight, and you can see the wreckage that you've left behind in your wake and go, it could be me.
It's true. It's true. And it's funny, you say weight, man, a trigger word. I
Hmm.
can't tell you how much weight I've unburdened myself
Oh, yeah.
from, and I've let go over the last 4 years, 5 years,
Hmm.
just a pound at a time. But you start to realize, how did all that get into that backpack?
Yeah.
How did I carry it for so long? And then you feel lighter and lighter and peaceful and peaceful. And even, the season I'm just in, there was a tough season. It was hard, but every time I just grounded out and I knew that the levity would come, it does.
Hmm.
And then you remind yourself that it's just a season. It's just a
Yeah.
moment,
Yeah.
you know?
we all go through dark times. It's how we meet those moments, and then how we make sure we resolve them so they don't haunt us, so they don't bother us, they don't become those things. And it's great that you did that, and of course told a story that incorporates some of your leadership. Let's get a plug in for your podcast too. You have a podcast that you work. Tell us about that.
Yeah, no, it's my partner Dean Carver and myself have a podcast called Redefining ROI, and it's all about how people are your purpose and how to use your people and how to connect with your people in a way that allows you to see what return on investment really means. And it's driving into that fluidity between HR and every other vertical. And that goes back to the concepts of leadership. And so we explore this last episode, which hasn't aired yet. It will air in the next, we just filmed it. It's all about intelligence. And we had a whole, hey, just talk about intelligence. And we always have a few scripts that my marketing team, Anna and Alicia, who they're wonderful, but they're used to me just riffing. And I just said, listen, I cannot have a script. I can't even read the beginning parts of the podcast that say, stick to this line. Or I can't do that. Dean's got to do that because I just riff. But I ended up, and you'll see on social media, I ended up just talking with my back on the ground, and I held the mic. And I said, I got to move around. I can't stay seated. And they're like, all right, just do you. And man, it was like a whole different level. And I said, I'm not looking at any questions. Let's just talk. And we did for 45 minutes. It was just, one of those cool, unfiltered experiences, like a riff session or a jam session.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way you got to be. Energy really sells in the podcast. And, I have people that will send in questions, and usually the questions are number one in their voice. That's why we usually ask for third-party questions. And number two, a lot of the questions are just kind of, set up lame softballs. And,
sure.
So I usually spin their questions into my questions that I want to ask and what I think the audience wants to hear more. So, because sometimes it can feel really staccato reading off the thing. I improv what they call the ramble, the intro to the show. And I used to do a little bit more with it. Now we just kind of punted a little bit. But when you do 2,800 shows, 17 years, you start to lose it. Clearly, I've lost it beyond that. Now you have let's talk about the second book that you have that's a follow-up to this. Do we want to get into that maybe?
Yeah, no, I think anyone that has this child in them, this self, we talk about looking at your younger self. This story is all about this 6-year-old boy, and he just sort of comes in and out of the Tristan's life, and it ends up being fun to read. And I've had people just say, I read it in 2 hours, and when's the next one? So the next one follows a similar sort of format, and it's measured, which is why I mentioned, Christopher Nolan being a bit of an inspiration on how I write. People are like, well, it's movies. Yeah, but he traverses time, and he jumps in and out of different, he bends and shifts how we understand and how we think in a linear fashion, more alinearly. And so the second book takes Tristan, and it actually removes him back 50 years. And it walks through what Tristan may have experienced, touching some of the lives that impacted him in a traumatic way from their vantage point. So now he's a 6-year-old sort of walking in and out of not his parents' lives, but his parents' lives, to see where the generational influence happens, and to understand more about what they felt as the little boy from their parents. And I think it's a cool way to tell a story, but it also gives a different vantage point. It's just been fun to write. Yeah.
There you go. What I'm going to ask you about on the show that we should probably ask you about to enlighten people on some of the things you do.
Yeah, just in general, I think I would tell you music is a big thing for me. Exercise is a big thing for me, but movies. I mean, I spend a lot of my day dreaming. My younger daughter, Henley, is a spitting image, and her mind is the way mine is. And so we just been binging Stranger Things, which is I know it puts me way, where have you been, bro? But my daughter's just now 12. She's 11, just getting ready to turn 12. And, we wanted to make sure we cared about what she sees. And finally she's at a stage where she's like, Daddy, can we watch this movie? And we'll watch it together. And so some of the things I love that I think are sitting down and just being in the same room with her, experiencing things like that. It's just cool to see her mind work and what the questions she has and how smart she is. I mean, I've watched her become smarter than me over the last 4 weeks, almost, exclusively. And I think to myself, that was the hope. This is just cool. It's cool to watch,
Yeah, there you go. Well, it's so great when, you see them discover stuff for the first time.
Right.
We're kind of jaded as our older selves, where we're just like, yeah, whatever. It's more of that business.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah. It feels better to watch her sort of experience this, and then you can kind of help to hedge some of the things. They're like, that's not going to be useful for you. Keep thinking down this way. And so it's been good. And
inspiring that creativity too. A lot of kids, they just get told no all day long.
Yeah. Yes. That girl's got great. I mean, she's in middle school. They're both in middle school, and the different kinds of conversations we have now it's making for my wife, who's a therapist and has her own practice. She has definitely struggled in different ways. For me, I welcome it, but that was a lot of my childhood. So
wow, there you go. So as we go out, give people final pitch out to pick up your book, how they can find out more about doing business with you for consulting or working with your consulting company, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
So, the book, The Safe Place, I would love for people to check it out. It's on Amazon. It's on, it's on barnesandnoble.com. A lot of reviews on Goodreads, a lot of reviews on Amazon. I think it's wonderful because they've been very, very strong. But visit, BrandonRogersAuthor.com, visit ToOurConsultingGroup.com. My email, my phone number, it's very intentionally out there. I want it to be accessible. I want for people to reach out and say, this mattered, or, hey man, I didn't agree with this, or maybe think, whatever. I want to spark a conversation. I'm not interested about being right, or I don't want it to be, man, that was just so awesome. I just want to connect. And I think, if it's helpful professionally, if it's helpful personally, or, spiritually, emotionally, that's part of what I think drives me to do these things. And, any opportunity to touch, and shape a life is awesome.
And what a great way to give back too, Brandon. I mean, that's really what you're doing. You're sharing your story, you're spreading your inspiration, your enlightenment, and hopefully we can encourage more people to get therapy and help for trauma and different things. If you have it, folks, get it as soon as you possibly can, because you can't see outside of your rose-colored glasses, outside of your shaped trauma sometimes, most of the time. And the sooner you can get help, the better your life is going to be. And putting it off is a dumb thing to do. And please don't do stupid shit like sound baths and crystals and all that kind of crap.
Right.
That's just my personal opinion. Go to freaking professional therapy with a licensed professional. Quit mucking around on TikTok. Anyway, that's just my grind.
Yep. Love that. Love that.
I see too much of this foo-foo magic crap, and a lot of it's just to avoid self-accountability, like astrology and stuff. People go see a professional therapist. Make sure they have a license, and make sure you spend time, and be honest with them. Don't PR spin them with your narcissistic bullshit, because I have plenty of that. Anyway, thank you very much, Brandon, for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thanks so much, Chris.
There you go. Order up his book wherever fine books are sold. It's called The Safe Place by Brandon M. Rogers. And Brandon, did I get your .coms as you're rounding out your final pitch?
Yes, sir. ToOurConsultingGroup.com and BrandonRogersAuthor.com.
There you go. Thanks to Brandon for coming on the show. Thanks to our audience for tuning in. Remember, cajole and refer your family, friends, and relatives. Just bug them until they finally subscribe to the show. They hit that iTunes link. You can find it. It's like, wait, what is it? It's HTTP. It's chrisvoss.show. chrisvoss.show. It's that easy to send people there. It's all one word. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the most amazing, intelligent podcast ever made to improve your brain and your life. Warning, consuming too much of the Chris Voss Show podcast can lead to people thinking you're smarter, younger, and irresistible sexy. Consume in regularly moderated amounts. Consult a doctor for any resulting brain bleed.